I'm Michael Thurman, Assistant Chaplain at Tuskegee University. I bring you greetings from Dr. Gregory S. Gray, Dean of the Chapel, and our President, Dr. Lily McNair. Several weeks ago, the university had to literally flip learning on its head and move to an online platform to finish the spring semester, as did most of the colleges around the country, in response to the novel coronavirus. After this was accomplished, the university leadership began to ask, how can we be of a resource to the larger community, Tuskegee and beyond, given our resources and our expertise? Then acting president, Dr. Ruby Perry, appointed a task force to explore how the university might be of assistance in aiding a community in crisis. Out of these initial conversations emerged the Community Engagement Task Force. One of the ideas which came out of the task force was the need to get the word out to the African American churches and congregations. They impact a significant number of people in the community. This is in addition to the message of the public health experts at the university, who are also carrying out various duties and assignments in fulfillment of the task force commission. So it is in that vein that that the Tuskegee University Chapel has reached out to the religious leadership in the Tuskegee community. Today I am joined by the Reverend EManuel, pastor of the Greater Friendship Missionary Baptist Church here in Tuskegee and president of the Macon County Ministers Council. Reverend EManuel is also a website developer and owner of EManuel Solutions. Its website and social media clients includes the Alabama State Missionary Baptist Convention Incorporation, the East Mississippi Baptist State Convention, and more than 50 churches and church districts. Reverend EManuel will also be joining Dr. Reuben Warren, the director of the Bioethics Center, in another segment. As we're all aware, this is a virus that knows no boundaries. It is an equal opportunity killer and has turned our country and the world upside down. COVID-19 does not care if we're Christian, non-Christian, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Baptist, Methodist, Muslim, Jew, or Pentecostal. It does not care. So far, it has infected more than 1.4 million people in the US and has killed more than 80,000 people in the US alone. With nearly 4 million cases around the world, approaching 300,000 deaths. Unfortunately, it impacts communities of color at a disproportionate rate. As pastors and lay leaders of congregations, we have a responsibility to our church family and the community at large to protect and preserve life and health. It is therefore imperative that we as church leaders set the example of good community, of good citizenship, and might I add, responsible Christianity, and practice social distances, as many of us have, by refraining from holding public worship service, public gatherings, funerals, Bible studies, what have you. As we're all aware, there have been a number of documented cases in which an outbreak of the coronavirus has resulted from persons attending worship service and funeral services. For example, in Albany, Georgia, several dozen people became infected after attending a funeral, and 4 people died as a result of not practicing social distancing. It is therefore of utmost importance that we continue to listen to public health experts and take the necessary steps to ensure the safety of our congregations and communities, and thereby seek alternative methods of practicing our faith. We ask that we continue to practice social distancing by abiding by the rules and guidelines set forth by public health officials. In the New Testament, Christians met from house to house, and we can do the same through means of digital technology. Reverend Manuel will share some pointers on using virtual technology for corporate worship and fellowship during these times. So we welcome Reverend Manuel. Thank you for being a part of this discussion.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here to just talk about this issue, because it has been challenging for our churches and our community to pivot and make a turn to move toward digital media, especially if if they have not used any type of digital media in the past. One of the things that we have to understanding with with the various levels of quarantine, it's not something that starts and stops immediately. It's something that continues to evolve. And there are challenges. It's creating challenges to the community, the faith community, to make meaningful connections with parishioners. And so one of the common misconceptions is that there's just one right way to do it, that there's one right way to connect with your people. We can't assume that there's one right way. We actually have to use every means available to us. Just as a scripture reference, 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and 22, Paul says, I've become all things to all men, that by all means I might save some. So he's doing everything he can just to try to reach some. And I think that during this time with this pandemic, churches have to do the same thing. We have to look among our congregations and figure out what tools are useful to us to reach the faith community, tools that we can employ in this critical time. And so if I were to give us an idea of what those medias would be, one of the first would be a website. And the reason why I'm saying a website is necessary, even though, you think about the streaming and, the social media, I'm saying that a website is important because it's more like a home base. One of the problems with social media is that it's right now, and meaning that once you see something, you come back tomorrow, you may have to scroll quite a bit to find it again. But with a website, your information is there. It is static. It is in place. And you can tie everything into a website, even if you're using multiple services from different places. So a website becomes kind of your home base, where you can give updates, share information, and people can always go to your website and find that information. Now, moving on from your websites for a church, I would say that using email is very important. We live in a time right now where we may not realize it, but more of our parishioners have email addresses than we realize they have, because, if they've got a smartphone, and they want to use that smartphone, if it's an Android phone, they've got a Gmail. If they're working age, they've probably got email with work. If it's even if it's an Apple phone, iOS, you're talking about iCloud email. So they've got some sort of email. And you may have to use email to reach out, to send weekly updates or send monthly updates. I know for the church that I pastor, Greater Friendship Missionary Baptist Church in Tuskegee, we've been sending out email updates along with posting content on our website, because we want to try to reach people in as many ways as possible. I think the third thing we would have to really employ is the use of social media. And we have to just make sure that when we're using social media, that we understand how it works. What are some of the best practices to keep your church safe and to keep the people who visit your social media profiles safe? For example, if you're using Facebook or you're using Instagram, both of those platforms allow you to have a personal profile, but then you can create what is like a business profile or a business page, which operates differently. So on a personal profile, you and I can be friends on Facebook, but if I have a business profile for my church or my business, then that means you can click a like button to follow me. And then that way, all of the things that you do personally don't show up on my business or my church timeline. And you can set your security parameters so that only certain individuals with administrative rights have the ability to make or post information on that organization page, if you take care of your security and read the fine print, then you can really begin to get the most out of social media and not be afraid to use it. Because we've all heard horror stories about social media. And I've talked with many pastors that have said, hey, I want a website, but I don't want to deal with that social media, because they've heard these reports in the news and they think that it's something negative. It's just like anything else that has been created. It's just a thing that's created, and it's up to people to determine how they're going to use it. And thankfully, many of these social media platforms do have security features that you can employ to keep your church safe. But here's the wonderful thing about social media for a church. If someone likes your church on social media, if they follow your church on Twitter or they follow your church on Instagram, really what they're saying is, I don't mind carrying you in my pocket. I don't mind having you with me everywhere that I go. And so you may reach someone in the middle of the day when they come across something that's in their timeline because you posted it and they liked your page, and they may share it with their followers. And that's very powerful. When you consider, if you pastor a church of 200, and let's say you've got a teenager in your church who has a Facebook account, that teenager may have 500 or 600 friends on Facebook. They actually have more followers than you do if you're the pastor of a church of 200.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to use this communication method, not just to get information out, but to leverage the influence of others so that they can share whatever you're posting with their followers, so that you increase your reach to go beyond just those who show up at your church on Sunday morning. And this has become very vital during this time of quarantine, where there are churches who have had a struggle putting out any type of digital content. And there are people who are still looking to hear words of hope and inspiration from God, that they may be looking for your church or organization to post something on social media. So it's very important that you learn how to engage with this particular medium and employ it for your church. I would also say video is very important. It has become king on social media. It started out with text. We had Twitter, 140 characters. Now we're moved beyond text to photos, and photos are great, but we're in a season now where everyone wants to see video. That's what captures people's attention. So having the ability to use some type of streaming service to stream your messages, to stream your Bible studies, to even stream your Sunday school or your prayer meeting, to not only stream, but in some cases record it and then just upload it to a platform so that people can watch it on demand whenever they're ready. Having video gives people a greater experience than them just hearing your voice or just seeing a picture or just reading text. So video is very important, and I would say that you've got to look for ways that you can employ video. Even if you're in a rural context, there are ways that you can employ video. And then, of course, you have audio streaming services, and sometimes you're going to have to use those to reach other segments of your congregation. And it's because everybody is not on the internet. Not all of your members are on social media. Some of them are not going to use video services. Some of them have smartphones, but they don't have the kind of service with their smartphone that allows them to stream. They may be on a prepay phone. So you don't really know what they have access to. So using an audio service like a calling service, free conference call or something like that, where people can dial in a number, or even with a Zoom, like what we're doing now, anytime you set up a Zoom meeting, there's a call-in number that a person can make a phone call to be able to hear the content, even though they can't see the video. And I have found that this has been very effective, talking to several pastors, that they're using these types of services alongside video services because they have elder members in their congregation, senior citizens in their congregation that are not technically savvy, who do not use the internet, but do have the courage to dial a phone number and, follow some directions to enter in an access code or a password. And so these are the kind of things that, will help you reach various segments of your congregation. And so all of these services, along with messaging services, written communication, really in this time with so much uncertainty and with such a desperate need to maintain contact with people so that they can have a sense of community, especially those who are isolated, it is important that you use everything. So if I were to tell you what that looks like, I will tell you that many of my clients, they are posting new content on their website. They're sharing that same content to social media. They're streaming on Sunday morning and Wednesday night or whenever they choose to stream, and they're sharing that same content during the video stream. And some of them are sending that same content out in email, and they're also sending that content out in written letters, going through the post office, regular mail, to each household in their church. And by all of these means, they're trying to reach as many of their people as possible, even with the understanding that there still may be some that will fall through the cracks. So we really just have to do everything. And it's a learning curve, but I believe we can do it.
That's awesome, Reverend Manuel. My father is 84 and pastors up the road in Auburn, Alabama. And even he has gone to a digital platform. And
Okay.
each Sunday morning, they're out there. Got a young adult in the early 30s who coordinates everything and gets it
Wow.
together. And Dad has built him a little pulpit in the dining room, on the dining room table, and he preaches every Sunday morning
Wow.
from that setting. It was so humbling to see this guy make the shift into the digital age. Got a 90-something-year-old stepmom who also has an iPhone, and she knows how
Okay.
to use it. But for those people who are in areas like this, who may not have access to technology, you mentioned that there was some alternative, such as dial-in services, etc. I know I've tried to get on several local services, and they've had challenges
Yes.
with the Zoom services, etc., because we have sometimes not so dependable Wi-Fi connection
Right.
in the region. That's awesome.
So here's my suggestion for individuals who have run into that problem. You may need to rearrange your schedule so that what you're producing to make available to your people, to your parishioners, becomes something that is not centered around Sunday. And so what that may look like is when there is not as much internet traffic in your area, say on a Tuesday, maybe you're actually, instead of going live, you're recording your message on a Tuesday. There are ways that you can take your smartphone, take your laptop, your tablet, whatever you're using. You can record your service or record your message. Then after you record the message and you know that it's the way you want it, when there's little traffic and you get to a place, you may have to leave home. You may have to go to your favorite restaurant that's, if they're open, or a coffee shop, or someplace, the library, anywhere where you can find a hotspot. You may need to connect to that hotspot and upload your message.
Wow.
And I know, for example, YouTube, when you upload a new video to YouTube, just as an example, you can set that video to premiere at a certain day on a certain time.
Okay.
And so you can upload it on Wednesday, they just can't watch it until Sunday. But at least you've got it in place, because you did it throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know several pastors that are preaching their sermons either in an empty church or in their office or in their home on a Thursday or on a Tuesday. They're uploading it Saturday night or they're uploading it early Sunday morning before the traffic gets heavy. And then those individuals who have the ability to watch by video, they can watch. So that is one way, you could work around the video streaming issue, is just to make it available on a platform that is big enough to handle the bandwidth. YouTube is a
Or
is a
instead of
really,
live streaming, some of them are pre-recording now and then
yes,
uploading, and then they beat the curve or beat the traffic on Sunday morning as trying to live
yes.
stream. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes. And so what we're finding some of those pastors are doing, which is really amazing, is they're using Sunday as a connection day. So if they're saying that the service is available at 10:45 on Sunday and people watch it on YouTube, and of course, if the pastor shares it to the church Facebook page, or they even have it embedded in their website, they do all of that. But then because they didn't have to preach on Sunday morning, they did it earlier in the week, they used Sunday afternoon as a time to make phone calls, to check on their members, to call each household, make sure everyone is all right. And that's very important, to give encouragement, to offer prayer when people need it, because right now it's the connection that's the most important thing.
That's true. That's true. In fact, I've heard some people say they almost prefer now the digital platform because it prevents them from, they don't have to get up and get dressed. You can sit there and you can drink your coffee while you enjoy the Sunday morning worship experience. I know I've enjoyed it, and it has worked well for me. And it's kind of neat sitting there drinking your coffee. And most of our churches would have a fit, of course, if you brought coffee in the sanctuary. And,
Well, there is some convenience. There
yeah,
is some convenience. I know a family in our church. They, have, I guess it's an Xbox or something, and you can get YouTube on an Xbox, and they're sitting all on the couch, and they're projecting it up through the Xbox on the television. They're sitting in the living room on the couch like they're watching a good movie. So it does have some conveniences, and one of the biggest conveniences that I did not mention that I think we should take into consideration is that when you enter into this digital communication, this digital platform, you have the opportunity for people to experience what you're offering on any day of the week. And so you may have people who will tune in on Sunday, but then you got people who worked on Sunday who will watch on Monday.
that's true.
Who will watch on Tuesday, their day off. Or maybe they'll just turn it on and have it playing in the background and listen while they're at work and they're doing something else. So we've seen a lot of views during this pandemic for our videos
Right.
throughout the week, not just on Sunday.
Ask you a real pertinent question. Many pastors sort of regretted going to the online platform because they had a fear that it would impact the offerings. And, it takes resources to run churches and to operate churches and ministries, etc. How have you found that to be?
It's different from situation to situation. Okay. If you are pastoring an older congregation that does not use digital media, does not use the internet, then even if you have a digital way of giving, that may be a challenge for them. And so you may see some of that drop off. If you're with a younger congregation and you provide, middle age and below, you provide some digital giving options, they may take advantage of it. But the same thing holds true for giving during this pandemic that holds true for communicating during this pandemic. You have to make every means available, which means you may have to provide people the opportunity to put their offering in the mail. You may have to provide the opportunity, if your church has a slot on the door or something, they can drop it off at the church. You may have to provide an opportunity for people to give digitally. You want to make every effort that you can to give people as many options as possible. Um, and I think what we have found is giving has been down in some cases, but in some other cases, because those churches were already engaged in some form of digital giving,
Right,
they
right.
didn't have to educate their people on how to use it because they had already been hearing about it for years. And so it depends really on your circumstance, whether you already were prepared for this. Well, you can't really say you were prepared for a pandemic, but the fact that you were prepared to do ministry in a digital space, you may have come out a little bit better. Uh, my concern was, when we had pastors at the very beginning who were going door to door to make collections, and I thought that was dangerous. Um, it's a little bit better if you got people doing a drop off, and you practice your social distancing. They drive by in their car, they drop off their offering, and then your finance committee does what is necessary to take it in. I think that that's a safer alternative than going door to door, house to house. But there has been a little bit of a downturn for some of our churches, but overall, I think if you make as many methods available as possible,
Right. I
you'll
attended
end up in a
an
better
online
situation.
service this past weekend
Mhm.
and noticed that this was a small rural congregation, and they had Cash App available. And I thought that was unique. But let's move to another topic. As churches, states are beginning to reopen, and people, of course, kind of caught in the same situation that many of our churches are, situation between economy, the economic health of the churches and ministry, as well as the health of our individual congregations. So that's sort of on a microcosm, the same issue the country is facing. So many of the states, Dr. Fossey feels that are beginning to open too soon. He made an appeal to Congress yesterday regarding that. And I noticed that our churches, meaning churches across the state of Alabama, can reopen as early as this coming Sunday. And what are your thoughts on that, especially in light of the fact that this virus seemed to disproportionately impact African Americans? And what are your thoughts on that? What are you hearing?
I think, first of all, you have to look at the guidelines being provided by health professionals. That's going to be your source because this is primarily a life or death risk that you're taking. And so I know in the state of Alabama, they have issued some very detailed guidelines about what it will take for you to resume your services. And that document, I just had a meeting recently with our church leaders to go through that document, and we already see it's going to take us weeks to get ourselves prepared to think about, coming back together. I would say that in light of everything we have seen with the impact on the African American community, everything we have seen on the impact in our elder community, we need to err on the side of caution. We need to take our time, and we need to make sure that we're doing every possible thing we can to ensure the health and safety of our members. You may have to go into your church and take some tape or some rope and rope off different sections where people can and cannot sit. You may have to, along with doing those types of things, think about some guidelines that may not have been included. The state of Alabama did not give us any guidelines, for example, on ingress and egress. How do you get people out of their car and into the church? Because if you've got 2 or 3 families all lined up trying to get in the door, you're not doing your 6 feet of separation at that point. Um, do you want people to fill in from the front so that people, one family doesn't cross and walk by another family, that everybody keeps their distance? What do you do about your restrooms? What do you do, when someone needs to use the restroom? Do you have the materials to disinfect once everyone leaves? Do you have the ability to train your ushers to escort people to their seats? There are a lot of things that need to be considered. And so it is my prayer and my hope that we would not rush into this. I know that not every church has the luxury. Okay, some churches are in a position where they have the luxury because they are a little bit more stable financially to be able to weather this a little bit longer. But there are some churches that are what I would like to call house poor, meaning, hey, the house is paid for, the church is paid for, but with their offering, they're only bringing in enough money, you know, to give an offering to the minister, to the musician, and to pay the light bill. And when you've got a church that's in that situation where they're going week to week, paycheck to paycheck, it makes it very difficult for them to think clearly about the health issue alone, because they've got to think about the wealth issue as well. How do we survive if people aren't coming and people aren't contributing? So it is really my hope that we would think that the health and well-being of our members is more important than the financial contributions. But that we would really take our time and that we would seek wise counsel.
I think that's where we are in our country. It's my fear and a lot of other people's fear, health experts' fear, that we'll end up having to go through the lockdown again because
Yes.
clearly the virus is not it's not just going to disappear. It's going to be with us for a while, and what we're developing are practices that will be with us for a long time. I'm glad to hear you
Dr.
say.
Thurman, can I say something? I just want to say something about that. Here's something else we need to consider. If we integrate, and I'm glad that you said something about a second wave, if we integrate and we begin to go back into our sanctuaries, into our congregations, and we're practicing the social distancing, and we've purchased all the things necessary for cleaning and checking people's fevers and things like that, we have to understand that whatever method we put in place needs to be sustainable all the way out, at least until September. This is not something you're going to do the first week. This is not something you're going to do the first month. And then by the second month, you can just stop disinfecting, or you can stop with the protocols to keep people separated. We need to be thinking long term, whatever protocols we put in place in case there's a second wave, or in case it, according to what the CDC is telling us, that it won't die down until August or September. You need to make sure that whatever you're planning to do at your church is going to be sustainable all the way until fall.
I think that's a good observation, Pastor EManuel. I know here at the university, as there's other universities, there's a debate about when are we ready to receive in-person students in classrooms. And so we're going through that, and I'm sure churches will be going through that as well. This conversation hopefully has been meaningful to those who will watch, because I think I've gleaned information, didn't realize that there was a difference between uploading and live streaming, which is sort of basic stuff. But unless you're out there in digital media, you may not realize that you can get ahead of the curve by uploading rather than waiting on Sunday mornings to live stream. Any parting words as we get ready to wrap this up? This has been very helpful, and I think an excellent conversation. Maybe folks can take it and with their pastors, leadership can use this with their pastors, etc., pastors with leadership, and discuss the various issues that they're facing. Or any parting words?
Well, my parting words would be to not be afraid to try, not be afraid to enter into this new space. Anytime you do something new, there's going to be a learning curve. Even if you want to put an ad in the paper for the first time and you've never put an ad in a newspaper before, you have to learn what that process is. And so you'll have to learn the processes and the ins and outs of using the social media platforms. There are a ton of resources available. that can help you watch videos, how-to videos on how to get things done. I would say contact a web professional, contact someone who knows what they're doing, or someone who has a background in IT that may be able to answer some of your questions. It is a learning curve. It will take some time, but I think the benefit and the reward of being able to know how to use various platforms to reach as many people as you can, the benefits outweigh the hard work that you'll put in on at the front end of it. So, you know, talk to someone, reach out to someone. You can reach out to me if you want to. I will gladly answer your questions, because ultimately for me, I'd rather see your church succeed than for you to struggle through this season. And so, you know, you can always reach me, EManuelBiz.com. I'm available through email. Even if all you want to do is ask questions, I will answer your questions, because none of us can do this by ourselves, and none of us can make this work by ourselves. I've learned so much in this last 45 to 50 days of being in this quarantine, dealing with so many people who are using so many methods that I could never use them all, but I don't want to just keep that knowledge to myself. And so try your best to reach out to somebody that can help you, because you owe it to your congregations and also to your community, because the church becomes a hub in our African American communities where information can be shared and disseminated. So please, please don't just sit back and say, I'm going to wait for this to blow over. Try to find a way that God can use you to have a positive impact while you can, even in the midst of this pandemic.
Awesome, man. Awesome. What we're going to do is make sure that there's a blurb that gives your contact information, email,
Sure.
telephone number for those who may want to consult with you as to how to put some of these ideas in place. On behalf of President McNair, Dean Gray, the Community Task Force, and Doug Eves, I want to thank you, Reverend Manuel, for your time, for your friendship, for being a friend of the universities and a friend of the chapels. Very meaningful time together. Have a great day, man.
Thank you, and same to you.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.